Chapter 13. I chased after the big dog, but no way could I catch him. 4 legs are always faster than 2, especially when they're on a golden lab. He galloped right between 2 lawn gnomes standing beside the front walk, and finally stopped on McClatchy's front porch. "No, get away!" I shouted, running up the middle of the yard. "Mr. Phineas, move! Get off the porch!" I was just a few feet away when I realized the dog wasn't standing right. He had hunched his whole body. His head was down. A deep groan escaped Mr. Phineas's throat. He tightened his body even more. His tail was tucked tightly between his legs. I recognized that pose. The dog was going to be sick. I couldn't get there in time. I stood and watched as Mr. Phineas started to vomit. Groaning and moaning, he choked up big hunks of puke. His whole body heaved and shook as he vomited a messy pile. Guess where? Yes, right in front of McClatchy's front door. "Mr. Phineas, come," I ordered. "Come here. Mr. Phineas, come." The dog stood up straight and licked the vomit off his lips. "Mr. Phineas, get away from there." I moved forward to grab the leash, and the front door swung open. The porch light flashed on. McClatchy squinted out at me. His expression quickly turned angry. "Hey, what's your dog doing on my front porch?" he snarled. "I'm sorry, Mr. McClatchy," I started. "Please don't walk." He pulled the front door in further and stepped out. His foot landed in the mountain of puke. It made a sick squish. McClatchy's mouth dropped open as he slipped up on the vomit. His foot slid out behind him, and his face fell down, and he fell face down on the porch. Vomit splashed up in a high wave. Muttering to himself, he slipped and slid in it. Finally, he managed to pull himself to his feet. He shook his fists in the air and screamed his lungs out for a long moment. Then he pulled back his leg and kicked Mr. Phineas in the belly. The dog uttered a yelp. It was a hard kick. Mr. Phineas landed on his feet in front of me, whispering softly. McClatchy stood glaring at me, hands on his hips. "Hey!" I shouted angrily. "You can't kick my dog!" McClatchy stuck his jaw out. "I just did. What are you going to do about it, kid?" I stared back at him. I was too angry to speak. My hands were balled into tight fists. My chest felt about to explode. "Well, what are you going to do about it?" McClatchy repeated. "I'll think of something," I told myself. "Don't worry, McClatchy. I'll think of something." Chapter 14. That night I was up in my room moving my chemical bottles around on the lab table. I was too angry and upset to work with my chemistry set, but it felt good to move the bottles around. I didn't tell my parents about the car accident. I was trying to think of a good way to give them the news. Kayla sat on the edge of my bed, resting her head in her hands. "You have to calm down," she said. "You're totally losing it." "I'm not losing it," I said. "Mr. Phineas has to be avenged." "You have to be careful," Kayla warned. "I can't be careful," I told her. "I have to teach McClatchy a lesson. He can't just kick someone's dog because they puke on his porch." Kayla locked her eyes on me. "You're looking for trouble." I banged a bottle on the table. "McClatchy is the one looking for trouble." She sighed and stood up. She brushed her red hair back. "So what do you plan to do?" I don't know," I replied. "I'm going to sneak out. I'm going over to McClatchy's house. But I don't know what I'll do when I get there." She shook her head. "Jay, you know you're not allowed to go out after dinner." "Tell someone who cares," I said. She stomped her foot and strode out of the room. "Are you going to tell on me?" I shouted. She didn't answer. I went to the window and stared down at the street. It was a clear, still night. The trees didn't move. The sky was a deep purple. Streetlights sent a pale yellow glow over McClatchy's tall hedge at the curb. Suddenly, I knew what I would do to get my revenge. I chuckled to myself. Sure, it was mean. It was very mean. But McClatchy deserved it. He had to be taught a lesson. I had to stand up for Mr. Phineas and all dogs everywhere. My head buzzed with excitement. My hands felt clammy. I could feel my heartbeats fluttering in my chest. Yes, this was mean, but perfect. I crossed the room to my bookshelf and bent down to the bottom shelf. I found the old book under a pile of magazines. It was a book I'd found in the library back home. It was yellowed and dust-smeared, and the pages were cracked. But I stole it from the library because it was the most amazing chemistry book ever written. The faded title on the front of the book read, Chemical Magic. There was no author name. Maybe the author wanted to keep hidden, because the instructions in the book were dangerous and frightening. The chemical mixtures were like witchcraft or sorcery, not science. The formulas and mixtures could do horrible things to people. Change people into monsters, make them grow fur or fangs, or shrink them to the size of insects. It was crazy. It was wild. It seemed impossible. But the mysterious author claimed that anyone could make these potions out of simple chemicals. I'd buried the book on the bottom of my shelf because it scared me a little. But now it was time to drag it out and use it. McClatchy asked for it, and I knew exactly which mixture I wanted to make. My hands trembled as I gathered the ingredients. I was nervous and frightened and excited all at the same time. And as I began to measure and pour, a smile crossed my face. McClatchy, you are doomed. Chapter 15. I stepped out into the night. I crossed the street and walked up the sloping lawn to McClatchy's front stoop. Holding the glass bottle in one hand, I knocked on the front door with the other. McClatchy was surprised to see me. He greeted me with a cold sneer. What are you doing here? I came to apologize, I said softly. I flashed him my most sincere look. I feel so bad about what happened. He blinked. Apologize? I nodded. Can I come in? I held up the bottle with its dark liquid. I brought you a cold drink. He squinted at me, studying me. Then he slowly opened the screen door. I stepped into his front room. The room was dimly lit. The furniture was all black and gray. Weird music played. It sounded like a lot of whistles tooting at once. I handed him the bottle. Try this, I said. It's a cold drink for you. My way of saying sorry. He took the bottle and sniffed it. Smells good. I hope you like it, I said. I really do want to apologize. I swear things will be different from now on. I watched him take a sip of my liquid mixture. He seemed to like it. He took a long drink, then he tilted the bottle and drank it all down. Good, right? I said. He licked his lips. Then he blinked his eyes several times. Did you enjoy it? I asked. Woof, woof, he said. Good, I replied. Woof, woof, roof, woof, McClatchy barked. Good boy, that's a good boy, I said. I patted him on the head. His eyes bulged and his eyebrows rose up high on his head. Woof, woof? Yes, I said. Yes, you get it, Miss McClatchy, boy. You're a dog now. My special drink turned you into a dog. Woof, woof, he nodded. He was definitely catching on. Why don't you get down on all fours, I said. Now that you're a dog, you have to learn to walk like a dog. Woof? He stared at me for a long moment. Then he lowered himself to the floor. Now, stand still, I said. Don't move. Woof? I'm going to kick you across the room. The surprised look on his face made me laugh. The laughter just tumbled out of me. I couldn't stop. I laughed and laughed. I stopped when a loud voice behind me shouted, Jay, what are you doing? What's so funny?